The city of Hallora Prime was made of tall glass towers that touched the sky. Flying cars hummed quietly above the streets. Robots cleaned the roads, and bright lights danced on the signs. It was a place full of technology, beauty, and control. But outside the strong walls of the city, things were very different. In the dry, broken lands beyond the dome, a man named Ben walked slowly, carrying a small baby close to his chest. The wind was hot and full of dust. His clothes were torn. His face tired, but his eyes stayed strong. The baby Laya was only 6 months old. She was weak and hungry. Her small hand gripped the edge of Ben's shirt as she cried softly. Ben had come from the outlands, a place forgotten by the rich. People there lived in broken shelters and ate whatever they could grow or find. But now nothing was growing. The sun was too hot and the water was drying up. His wife had passed away last month after falling sick. Now Ben had only one reason to keep going: his daughter. He had walked for 2 days and 1 night to reach Hallora Prime. The city guards didn't let people like him inside. Only those with ID chips and credit accounts were welcome. But he had to try. His baby hadn't had real milk in days. When he reached the shining city gates, he stepped in front of a scanner. The robot voice said, "No ID, access denied. Please, leave the area." Ben didn't move. "Please, my baby is hungry," he said, his voice dry. "I just need some milk. I don't want trouble, please." People passed by, dressed in smooth, clean clothes. Some looked at him, most didn't. A few turned away quickly. One woman whispered, "Why doesn't security move him?" A man in a suit said, "He's probably lying. They always are." Ben stood quietly, holding Laya tighter. Her crying was soft now, more like a whimper. He looked down at her, feeling his heart grow heavier. Just then, a voice spoke, kind and calm. "Is she all right?" Ben turned. A woman stood in front of him. She wore a plain white coat over soft blue clothes. Her hair was tied back and her eyes were gentle. She wasn't afraid of him like the others. "She's hungry," Ben said. "I've been walking. There's no milk out there anymore. I don't have credits. I don't have anything." The woman stepped closer. She looked at Leah, who was now almost asleep from weakness. The woman didn't ask more questions. Instead, she opened her bag and pulled out a small silver bottle. It was a Nutri-Feeder, something rich families used to feed babies, the perfect balance of vitamins and protein. "May I?" she asked softly, reaching her hands out. Ben hesitated, but then nodded. He watched as the woman took the baby gently and held her close. She touched the bottle to Laya's lips. The baby stirred then, began to drink slowly. For the first time in days, she didn't cry. Ben stared in silence. His hands were still shaking. "Thank you," he whispered. The woman smiled. "She's strong. You've done well. What's her name?" "Laya. I'm Mayra," the woman said. Ben nodded but didn't know what else to say. He wasn't used to people being kind to him. Around them, the city kept moving. The people, the lights, the robots. But here, just outside the gates, everything felt still. A guard robot rolled toward them and paused. "Citizen Mira, is this?" "Man with you." Ben tensed up. He was sure they were going to arrest him or send him away. But Myra simply said, "Yes, he's a guest." "Step aside." The robot's eyes blinked blue. "Understood." Ben's eyes widened. Guest? He had no idea who this woman was, but clearly the city listened to her. Mira turned to him and said, "You both need rest. Come with me. I'll get her more milk. You can stay tonight." "But I don't have anything to give you," Ben said. "You already gave something," Mira said, smiling. "You came all this way because you love your child. That's worth more than credits." Ben didn't argue. He followed her through a side path, past another scanner that beeped but allowed them through. Soon, a sleek silver car rose from a platform and opened its doors. Mira held Leah close as she guided Ben inside. As the car lifted into the air, Ben looked out the window. The towers of Halora Prime glowed under the orange sky. He didn't know where they were going, but for the first time in many days, he felt hope. Leah was safe. She had milk, and the woman who helped them was no ordinary person. The flying car moved quietly through the tall towers of Halora Prime. Ben sat stiffly in the back seat, still holding Leah close. The baby was calm now, full from the warm milk Mira had given her. She had fallen asleep with a soft breath, her tiny hand resting on Ben's chest. Ben looked at the woman across from him. Mira was quiet, her eyes watching the city as it passed below them. She didn't look like the other rich people he had seen. No jewelry, no golden pins, no bodyguards. She looked simple, yet everything around her obeyed her. "Where are we going?" Ben asked after a moment. "To my home," Mira replied gently. "You and Leah will be safe there for tonight. She needs proper care, and you need rest." Ben looked down at Leah. "I didn't think anyone inside the city would help us." Mira turned to him. "Why did you think that?" "Because people don't. Outlanders are seen as dirty, lazy, or dangerous. Most of us are just trying to stay alive. But no one in the city cares." Mira didn't answer right away. Then she said, "It's not that they don't care. It's that they've forgotten how to look." Ben didn't understand what she meant, but he stayed quiet. The car slowed and turned upward, rising higher and higher into the clouds. Above the regular towers, something new came into view, a smooth platform floating gently in the air. A wide glass home stood in the center of it, surrounded by trees, flowers, and soft grass. Birds flew through artificial sunlight. It didn't look like a city home. It looked like something from old Earth stories, a paradise in the sky. The car landed without a sound. The doors opened and cool, clean air greeted them. Mira stepped out first, still holding Leah gently in her arms. "Come," she said with a soft smile. "She can sleep peacefully here." Ben followed, unsure whether to feel grateful or nervous. Inside, the house was quiet. Soft lights glowed along the walls. Everything was clean, but not cold. The floors were warm, the chairs soft. Small helper bots moved quietly in the background. One brought warm water, another brought towels, and a third carried a silver case full of baby supplies. Mira handed Leah back to Ben, then opened the case. Inside were more Nutri bottles, clean blankets, and a small medical scanner. "Let me check her," she said kindly. Ben nodded. He sat down and held Leah while Myra ran the scanner over her. A soft light blinked, and Mira read the results. "She's tired and slightly dehydrated," Mira said. "But her body is strong. She'll be all right with care." Ben felt something in his chest loosen. A breath he didn't know he was holding finally came out. "Thank you," he said again. "I don't know what else to say." Mira looked at him. "You don't have to say anything more. I've seen people with everything turn away from a child like Leah, and I've seen people with nothing walk for days, just to find her milk. You've already said what kind of man you are." Ben felt his ears grow warm. No one had ever spoken to him like that before. Later, as Leah slept peacefully in a soft crib provided by Myra's home AI, Ben sat with a warm cup of tea in his hands. He looked around the living room. There were books on real paper. Old Earth. Music played gently in the background. A painting of mountains hung above the fireplace. "Why do you live up here?" he asked. Myra was sitting across from him, her feet tucked beneath her. "I used to live down in the core towers," she said. "High life, fast days, but it didn't feel real. Up here, I can breathe, I can think, and I can help quietly without making a show." Ben nodded slowly. "People down there would never guess you live like this." "That's the point," she said with a small smile. "They see the name Mira Lorne and think of old wealth, space mining, and board meetings. But that's only part of the truth. I'd rather be known by the people I help, not the credits I hold. Ben leaned back in his seat. So you really are that Mira Lorne? She didn't respond directly, just sipped her tea, and looked out the window at the stars beyond the dome. Silence filled the room for a moment. Then Ben asked, "Why help us? You could have just walked away." Mira turned to him again. "I saw a man who was doing everything he could for his child. And I saw a child who needed warmth. That's all I needed to see." Ben looked down at his cup. Most people don't see like that anymore. Then it's time they remembered. For the first time in many months, Ben felt warm not just in his body, but in his heart. He wasn't just another face in the dirt. Someone saw him. Someone helped him without asking for anything back. That night, as Ben lay on the soft guest bed provided to him, with Leah sleeping beside him, he stared at the ceiling and whispered, "Thank you." Somewhere in the house, Mira stood alone. On the balcony, looking up at the stars. The wind touched her hair gently. In her arms, she held a tiny blanket that smelled faintly of milk and baby skin. A memory, soft and distant, returned to her. The next morning, sunlight poured gently through the wide glass walls of the sky home. Artificial birds chirped in the garden trees, and a soft breeze moved the curtains. It felt nothing like the dusty outlands Ben was used to. It felt like a dream. Ben woke slowly, unsure for a moment where he was. Then he saw little Leah, lying beside him on a soft bed, her cheeks full and her skin healthier than before. She was sleeping peacefully, holding a plush animal given by one of Mira's homebots. Ben sat up and rubbed his eyes. His muscles were sore from days of walking, but his heart was lighter. For the first time in weeks, he hadn't woken to the sound of coughing or dry wind. He looked around the quiet guest room. Everything was clean, soft, and glowing with gentle light. He still couldn't believe a stranger had taken him in so kindly. The doors slid open without sound. Mira entered, wearing a simple white robe and holding a tray. "Good morning," she said, smiling. "I brought breakfast." Ben stood quickly. "You didn't have to. You're my guest," she said kindly, placing the tray down. "It's only toast, eggs, and tea. Something light for the both of you." Ben looked at the food. It was fresh and warm. It had been a long time since he had seen real eggs. "Thank you." "Again," he said quietly. Mira pulled a chair closer and sat down. "How did you survive so long out there?" Ben sat too, cutting the toast carefully. "My wife and I lived in a small farming pod. We grew roots and herbs. We stored water when we could. But then the heat got worse, and water stopped coming. My wife got sick. We had some old meds, but they weren't enough." Mira listened closely, not interrupting. "She passed away one night," then continued, his voice soft. "Since then, it's just been Leah and me. I kept hoping someone from the city would come out, but they never did." Mira nodded slowly. "That's why I built this place above the towers. From here, I can see both the beauty and the silence of the city. And I can decide who gets inside." Ben looked around the beautiful sky home. "You said you built it?" She nodded. "Yes. My father left me credits from his work in the asteroid colonies, mining, trade, rare gas harvesting. But I didn't want a palace in the city. I wanted peace and purpose. So I designed this sky home with care." Ben smiled a little. "It's the most peaceful place I've ever seen." Mira looked thoughtful. "Peace is rare, even here. Most people live in constant motion work, upgrades, reputation, but they forget to listen. They forget to feel." As they finished breakfast, Leah stirred awake. She yawned and stretched her little arms. Mira gently picked her up and held her. With care, like it was the most natural thing in the world. "She trusts you," Ben said. "Watching. I had a daughter once," Mira said softly. "Long ago." Ben blinked. He hadn't expected that. "What happened, if you don't mind me asking?" Mira shook her head. She was very young. She had a rare condition. We tried every tech, every doctor, but nothing worked. After she was gone, I realized I had all the money in the world, but I couldn't bring back what mattered. Ben lowered his eyes. I'm sorry. Thank you, Mira said. Helping others helps me breathe again. That's why I helped you. Not just for her, but because I believe in simple human kindness. Leah giggled softly as Mira rocked her gently. Ben looked down. I want to give something back. I can work. Fix things, clean. I know hydroponics. Just tell me what to do. Mira smiled warmly. You don't owe me anything, Ben, but if it makes you feel better, help me in the garden later. Ben nodded. Deal. Later that day, Ben followed Mira out to the garden platform. It floated gently above the main house, filled with green plants, colorful flowers, and a small pond. Artificial bees buzzed quietly, pollinating the flowers. A robot nearby watered rows of blue-leaf vegetables. You grow your own food here? Ben asked. Yes, Mira said. This garden feeds me and some of the nearby community centers. I send fresh packages every week. Not many know the source. Ben knelt beside a row of roots and touched the soil. It was rich, clean, and moist. This is beautiful, he said. In the outlands, our soil is dead. We used old tech to try and wake it up, but the heat ruined everything. Mira handed him a small gardening tool. Let's see what your hands can do here. Together, they worked side by side. Ben pruned the vines while Mira checked the water levels. They spoke little, but the silence felt comfortable. Leah lay nearby under a sunshade, smiling at the sky dot as they finished. Mira said, You have a good touch. You still believe in the land, even after all that hardship. Ben wiped sweat from his forehead. The land is all we had. Even when it stopped giving, I couldn't blame it. Mira nodded. That's a wise heart. Ben looked at her carefully. You're not like other rich people. Mira laughed gently. That's because I don't live for credits. I live for meaning. That evening, as the sky turned gold, Mira invited Ben and Leah to the upper deck. They sat on a wide bench, watching the sunset. I'll arrange medical care for Leah tomorrow, Mira said. And if you choose, I can help you find a home inside the city. Ben looked surprised. You'd do all that? Yes, but it's your choice. You're not a burden here, Ben. You're someone who tried, who came with hope. Ben held Leah close. The baby yawned, then smiled. I don't know what we did to deserve this kindness. Ben said. You kept walking, Mira replied, when most would have stopped. As the stars appeared in the sky, the three of them sat together. A baby who had known hunger, a father who had known loss, and a woman who had once lost everything, but chose to give instead. Ben was getting used to the quiet peace of the sky home. Each day felt like a small miracle: clean water, fresh food, real air, and Mira's warm presence. He had never thought a place like this could exist above the shining towers of Hallora. Prime. Every morning began with breakfast, and every evening ended with stories under the stars. Most of all, he loved seeing Leah smile again. But what amazed Ben even more was Mira herself. She didn't act like a millionaire. She didn't live like someone who wanted to be admired. She walked barefoot in her garden, spoke gently to her robots, and made her own tea. She listened when Ben spoke, and she played with Leah like a loving aunt. The more time Ben spent with her, the more he wondered about the past she never fully explained. One cool morning, Ben was trimming the edge of the vegetable bed while Mira sat nearby, reading an old paper book. Leah was crawling in the grass, laughing at a butterfly that fluttered above her head. Mira, Ben said slowly, can I ask something personal? Mira looked up. Of course. You said you had a daughter once. She nodded, placing her book gently on her lap. Ben continued. And you said you lost her, but you never speak much about it. I don't want to bring back bad memories. But I've seen how you look at Leah. There's something more there, isn't there? Mira looked toward the horizon. The city stretched far below them, shimmering towers, busy sky lanes, flashing signs. Daughter's name was Nia, she said quietly. She would have been 16 this year. Ben sat beside her, listening. She was born here, in the city, Mira continued. But not in this sky home. Back then, I still lived in the central core, where the richest people stayed. I had everything: robots, private doctors, the best machines. But none of them could save her. Ben looked at her gently. What was wrong? She had a rare condition. It caused her organs to weaken faster than her body could grow. There were treatments, but they only delayed things. I spent years searching, paying for labs to find a cure. I even went to the colonies in the sky rings. Mira paused. Her voice grew soft. One night, she looked at me and said, "Mom, can we go to the real Earth one day?" I told her Earth wasn't real anymore. She smiled and said, "Then show me something that feels like it." That's when I started building the sky home. Ben stayed quiet, not wanting to interrupt. She passed away before it was finished, Mira said. But I kept building it for her. I planted every tree with my own hands. I grew the grass from old seed banks. This place is my promise to her that something soft, quiet, and kind still exists. Ben placed his hand gently on Mira's. "I'm sorry you had to go through that," he said. "But this place, it really does feel like Earth. It feels like home." Mira smiled. Her eyes were a little wet, but her face was calm. "And now there's laughter here again. There's a baby's giggle, the sound of feet running in the garden. I never thought I would hear that again." Leah crawled over to Mira and reached up. Mira picked her up, kissed her forehead, and held her close. "She reminds me of Nia," Mira said softly. "Not her face, but her light, the way she looks at the world." Ben felt something stir in his chest. He had come here as a beggar, carrying a sick child, tired and hopeless. But now he felt like part of something bigger, something beautiful. Later that day, Mira showed Ben a hidden part of the sky home, a memory garden. It was a quiet corner, filled with silver flowers that glowed in the dark. At the center stood a small stone bench and a hollow tree. "This was Nia's idea," Mira explained. "Each flower holds a memory, pictures, voices, and messages. You can touch one and see a piece of the past." Ben touched a nearby flower. A soft light blinked, and a small hologram appeared. It was a young girl with short black hair, laughing as she tried to teach a robot to dance. "That's Nia," Mira said, smiling through her tears. Ben watched the scene silently. It only lasted 10 seconds, but it held so much life. So much love. "I wish I had met her," he said softly. "You did," Mira said, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You brought her back in a way I never expected." Ben looked confused. "She wanted me to help people, not just sit in a tower and watch the world suffer. But after she passed, I lost that purpose. Then you showed up, asking for milk, not for yourself, but for your child. That was the moment I knew I had to act again." Ben looked down. "I wasn't trying to inspire anyone. I was just desperate." "Desperation can still carry truth," Mira said. "You reminded me that real strength isn't found in credits or machines. It's in the love of a father, the cry of a baby, the courage to knock on a gate, even when you know it may not open." They stood there for a while, letting the silence speak for them. The garden swayed in the soft wind, and the silver flowers glowed brighter as the sky dimmed. That night, as stars blinked above the floating sky home, Ben sat by the garden, watching Leah sleep in a cradle made from real wood. He thought of the outlands, the dust, the hunger, and the pain. And then he thought of Mira, her kindness, her garden, her daughter, and her strength. This place was more than just a house. It was healing. It was memory. Days passed quietly in the sky home. and each one felt like a new chapter in Ben's life. Leah was healthier now. Her cheeks were full, her eyes bright, and her laugh echoed joyfully through the garden halls. Mira made sure she had everything: a soft bed, clean clothes, warm milk, and toys made by smart helper bots. And yet, Mira gave more than comfort. She gave something deeper. Peace. Ben, however, couldn't rest fully. His heart was heavy with the thought that he was receiving too much. He had always worked for what little he had. Now in this perfect floating home, he was a guest. He had no credits, no ID, no job, only his hands and the will to help. One morning, after breakfast, Ben walked into the garden where Mira was tending to her herbs. "Myra," he began, wiping his hands nervously on his pants, "I need to speak with you." She looked up with a warm smile. "Of course. I've stayed here too long without giving anything back," Ben said. "You've done more than I could ever repay, but I want to work. Let me clean the floors, fix the bots, plant more crops, anything. I don't want to feel like a burden." Mira stood and brushed the soil from her hands. She walked over and looked him in the eyes. "You're not a burden, Ben," she said gently. "You're a guest. A friend. You and Leah brought life back to this place." Ben lowered his eyes. "But I can't keep taking. I want to earn my place here, even if just for a few more days." Mira was quiet for a moment. Then she nodded slowly. "If working gives your heart peace, then I will not stop you. There's always something to do in the sky home. But know this kindness does not always need to be paid back." Ben nodded. "Thank you." From that day, Ben worked side by side with Mira and her helper bots. He fixed small machines in the kitchen. He updated the garden's water lines. He repaired a broken solar tile on the roof and even built a new wooden bench beneath a flowering tree. But one evening, as he was checking the greenhouse sensors, a delivery drone flew toward the sky home. It hovered above the platform and dropped a small silver box with blinking lights. Mira picked it up and frowned. Ben looked over. "Something wrong?" "It's from the central system," she said. "The city scanners picked up a foreign life record without ID." Ben froze. "Me?" Mira nodded. "The outer zone ID you had expired years ago. The city AI sees you as an unregistered presence." "Will they send security?" he asked, gripping the railing. "I've already blocked access to the sky homes." "Logs," Mira said calmly. "But this alert means they're watching." Ben stepped back, worried. "I don't want to cause trouble for you." Mira shook her head. "You are not the problem. The problem is the system that forgets people like you even exist." Later that night, Ben sat by Leah's cradle, thinking deeply. Mira had done everything for them, fed them, protected them, given them shelter. Now, because of him, the city might bring trouble to her door. He made a decision. The next morning, he packed a small bag with food Mira had given and left a note on the table. "Mira, you have given me and Leah more than I ever dreamed possible. But I can't put you at risk. I'll return to the outer fields and start again. Maybe one day I'll return with a proper ID. Thank you for everything." Ben carried Leah quietly out onto the lower dock of the sky home where Mira kept a small flight pod for short trips. But just as he reached the control panel, a voice behind him spoke softly, "You're not leaving." Ben turned. Mira stood barefoot, holding the note in her hand. "I can't let them come after you," he said. "I've already taken too much." "You haven't taken anything I didn't choose to give," Mira said gently. "You don't understand. Ben, the city doesn't control me. I own shares in the very systems that run their scanners." Ben blinked. "You do?" Mira nodded. "Yes, and I've already erased the alert from their network. You and Leah are safe here." Ben didn't know what to say. Mira walked forward and placed her hand on Leah's back. The baby was sleeping again, peaceful as always. "Ben," she said, "do Do you remember what I told you in the garden? Some kindness doesn't need to be earned. It just needs to be received. Ben sighed, feeling the weight in his chest lift. Slightly, but I don't want to live on your charity. This isn't charity, Mira said. It's connection. You helped bring this home back to life. You work with care. You fix what's broken. You treat Leah with love. This place needs that. Ben looked around the garden, the walls, the air itself. He saw it now. This sky home wasn't built to be alone. It was built to be shared. He stepped back from the pod, slowly placing the bag down. I'm sorry, he said. I just didn't want to lose the only safe place I've ever known, Mira smiled. Then don't run, stay, there's still work to do. Ben nodded slowly. Then I'd like to build something here. Not just fix what's broken, but create something new. Maybe a space for others like me, outlanders, lost ones. A garden for those without roots. Myra's eyes lit up. Yes, that would be beautiful. They stood together, watching the sunrise break over the towers. In Myra's arms, Leah yawned and stretched, then opened her eyes. Ben looked down at her, then at Mira. She's lucky to have you, he said. We're all lucky to have each other, Myra replied. The sun rose over the floating sky home, painting the glass towers of Halora Prime in shades of gold. From up high, the city looked peaceful, quiet, organized, glowing. But below the surface, things were shifting. Myra stood on her balcony, holding a mug of warm herbal tea. Ben was in the garden, tending to a new patch of green sprouts. Leah was napping under a sunshade, breathing softly, her cheeks rosy with health. It had been almost 2 weeks since Ben had first knocked on the city gates, tired and desperate. Now he looked stronger. He had fixed half the garden systems, repaired 3 helper bots, and started designing a small farming corner for outdoor crops. But peace never stayed long in places ruled by systems and machines. That morning, Mira received a private alert from the city core. A silver disc drone arrived quietly, slipping through the air like a shadow. It scanned her ID, hovered in place, and dropped a thin black cube. Mira took the cube inside, where it unfolded into a flat screen showing the Halora City Council emblem. Voice played. Citizen Mira Lorne, your recent activity has drawn attention. We request your presence at a council session. Topic: interference with system alerts and unauthorized harboring of non-citizens. Attendance is expected. Mira sighed and closed the device. Later, she found Ben by the greenhouse. I'll need to leave for a few hours, she said calmly. The council wants a word. Ben stood up straight. Is it about me? Yes, she said, not hiding the truth. They know I cleared your record from the system, and they don't like it. Should I leave? Ben asked. Maybe if. No, Mira said firmly. You stay. With Leah, you belong here now. Ben looked worried. Will they try to punish you? Mira smiled gently. They'll try to remind me of the rules. I'll remind them of something more important. The council tower was a sharp silver spire at the heart of the city. Inside, 12 members sat in a circle, their eyes focused on data screens. Above them, silent drones floated like watchers. Mira entered the room calmly, wearing a simple gray suit. Her long coat flowed behind her like mist. Citizen Myra Lorne, the lead councilman began. You have been found interfering with an I-security alert. You removed the report of an unauthorized person entering city limits. I did, Mira said, without fear. You harbor this person in your private zone, another added. This man has no ID, no citizen record, and no legal right to live in Halora Prime. Mira tilted her head. And yet, he is more human than many I've met inside these towers. There was a silence. He came begging, one councilwoman said. That's not citizenship, that's disorder. He came as a father, Mira replied, her voice calm but strong, carrying a child who was starving. He didn't break gates or steal. He knocked and asked for milk. One man frowned. That's not how systems work. If everyone like him came here, I would welcome them, Mira said. And you should too. A long pause followed. Mira, you are a shareholder in 5 major systems, another man said carefully. Your voice holds weight. But if you encourage people to bypass protocol, I'm not breaking order, she said. I'm reminding you what order is for. The room was silent again. Mira stepped forward. We built this city to protect people, not to forget them. We used machines to help us, but now they rule us. You let scanners decide who's worth saving. You let alerts become law, but laws without hearts are just walls. A few members exchanged glances. Mira continued. I gave a man shelter. I gave a baby food. I protected them from your cold system because I still believe in kindness. And if that makes you uncomfortable, then perhaps you need to change the system. The council did not respond immediately. Finally, the lead member spoke. You will not be punished this time. But we advise caution. I will never be cautious about compassion, Mira said, turning to leave. Back at the sky home, Ben sat with Leah on his lap, bouncing her gently while a helper bot played. Soft music. When Mira returned, he stood up quickly. What did they say? Mira smiled and walked over to him. They said I was warned, but I told them what they needed to hear. Ben looked at her in amazement. You stood in front of the whole council. For me, for you, for Leah. For everyone like you who gets ignored, Mira said. This city forgets too easily. I won't let it forget again. Ben looked down at Leah, who was playing with Mira's coat. I don't know what we did to deserve you. Mira laughed gently. It's not about deserve. It's about choice. I chose to help because it was right. Later that evening, Ben sat alone in the garden, thinking. He remembered how he had once believed people like Mira didn't exist. People who could change things without needing power or praise. People who looked at a poor man with a baby and didn't turn away. But Mira had proven him wrong. She had stood against the cold system, not with weapons or threats, but with words, truth, and heart. And in doing so, she reminded him, and maybe the whole city, what it meant to be human. The city of Halora Prime sparkled like a jewel beneath the stars. From the high sky home, Mira, Ben, and little Leah watched the peaceful lights below. The world was full of machines and systems, but that night, it felt full of hope too. Ben held Leah close. Her soft breaths and warm skin were a reminder of everything he had been fighting for. He remembered the long journey to the city gates, the cold rejections, and the hunger that nearly took his baby away. But now, with Mira by their side, everything was different. Days after Mira's visit to the city council, things began to change, not all at once, but slowly, like the first light of dawn. Mira called Ben to her study, a quiet room filled with books and glowing screens. We have a chance to build something new, she said, her eyes shining. A place inside the city for people like you, families from the outlands, those without credits or ID, but with hearts full of hope. Ben's heart lifted. A home for those who are forgotten? Yes, Mira said. Not a shelter or a charity. A community where they can work, learn, and live with dignity. I'm using my shares and influence to start it. But I need your help. Ben felt surprised and honored. I don't know much about city politics or money. You know the land, the struggle, Mira replied. And you have a heart full of courage. That is what matters. Together, they began planning the new center, a garden, a school, and a clinic. It would be called the New Roots. As weeks passed, Ben worked alongside Mira and the Sky Home team to design greenhouses, living pods, and water systems. He taught others what he knew about growing plants in dry soil. Mira spoke to city leaders, convincing them that the center would help reduce the gap between the rich and poor. Slowly, Other Outlanders arrived, families, workers, children, each carrying stories of hardship and hope. The Sky Home Garden was no longer just Mira's sanctuary. It was a place of healing for many. One bright morning, the gates of the new roots opened for the first time. Ben stood with Mira and Leah at the entrance, watching families enter with cautious smiles. Children ran to the gardens laughing. Adults began planting seeds and fixing machines. Ben saw a young woman carrying a baby who looked hungry and tired. Without hesitation, he walked over, offering the same silver Nutri-Feeder Mira had given Leah months ago. The woman looked at him with tears in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. Ben smiled, feeling a warmth spread in his chest. Mira watched from a distance, her heart full. She had once felt powerless, trapped by the rules of a city that valued machines over people. But now, surrounded by growing life and hope, she saw a future worth fighting for. She walked over to Ben and Leah, who were playing in the garden. "You did this," she said softly. "You brought back the spirit of the Outlands into the heart of the city." Ben looked up at her. "No, we did this together." Leah laughed, reaching for Myra's hand. "More," she said, as if asking for more joy, more love, more life. Mira stood on the balcony of the Sky Home, looking at the stars. She thought of her daughter Nia, who had inspired her to build this place. She thought of Ben and Leah, whose courage had sparked a change. She thought of the city, full of challenges but also full of people who could choose kindness. Her phone buzzed softly. It was a message from the city council, an invitation to speak at the next session about expanding the new roots. Mira smiled. Change was slow, but it had begun. Ben came to stand beside her. "What will you say?" he asked. "I'll say what I've always believed," Mira said. "That humanity is more than systems and laws. It is in the love we show each other. It is in the hope we carry when all seems lost." Ben nodded. "I'm proud to stand with you." Mira took his hand. "And I'm proud to call you family." Together, under the vast sky, they looked out over the city, a city that could still learn what it meant to care.